Now we move on to candidates. This is the candidate section, so this is big.
Yeah!
Our first candidate believes that smart people don't need university degrees, and that's why he got 4 of them. He'll have to explain that for us. But anyway, please welcome to the stage Mr. Mike ter Maat, 24.
Everything you need to know about commitment to liberty, we have just seen tonight with Spike and with Joe coming out here after the election, a year after the election, and hopefully forever. Can we get another round of applause? It's important for me to suck up to both of them, because when I tell this story 20 years ago, you know it's going to go something like, did I tell you about the time Spike and Joe opened for me in Lakeland? It's going to be a lot of fun. Unlike Spike, you will break my concentration if you clap, so I want you all to shut up, okay? My name is Mike ter Maat. I am a co-reform police officer. I'm an Austrian-trained economist, and there are 2 people, therefore, that I have no patience for. One is criminals, the other is Marxists. But I repeat myself. What about not interrupting me to table the assessment? Mises, baby, Austrian-trained economist. I appreciate that. One of those 2 types of people I want to talk about tonight. Marxism is on the march in the United States, and we need to make no mistake about that. We need to take it very, very seriously, I believe. Certain elements in our population are more vulnerable to this philosophy than others. Sadly, many of the people who are in District 20 in Florida, the people that I'm running to represent, fall into this category. Typically, it's people who are struggling to find answers to the seemingly intractable problem of poverty, something that we've been struggling with for a long time in the United States, of course. Looking for solutions to a very, very difficult problem. District 20 is an interesting place. It's cobbled together with a little piece of Broward, another little piece of Broward that's not continuous, and a little piece of Palm Beach County. What all these things have to do in common with each other is that they carefully avoid any place that has higher than average income. District 20 is a low and moderate income place. This is a place that's very blue. Sometimes Republicans don't run at all. This is a place that knows poverty. And there's something that I want all of us to remember about poverty. Indeed, if there's nothing else that you remember about my talk tonight, and indeed, most of you have more important lives to remember anything about my talk tonight, if you forget everything else, if you forget that my name is Mike ter Maat, if you forget how to spell my last name, it's T-E-R-M-A-A-T. If you forget my website, MikeTerMaat2022.com, if you forget the fact that in the upper right-hand corner is a contribute button and that I need money, if you forget all of that, please remember one thing. Poverty is a political phenomenon. The type of poverty of which we see too much in urban areas in the United States and have for a long, long time. That persistent intergenerational poverty is not something that would be anticipated, that it's not something that would be predicted by free markets. It is indeed the result of bad public policy. It is the result of too much government interventionism. It is unfortunately not true, as much as we wish we could believe it in the 1980s. It is, youngsters, look it up. It is unfortunately not true that a rising tide lifts all boats. Yes, a stronger economy provides more opportunities, it provides higher wages for most people, but that is presuming that you didn't grow up in a city that's held together by housing subsidies from the federal government years past its sell-by date. It's assuming that you didn't grow up in a public school that deals more in despair than good education, but is protected by a local monopoly. It's presuming that your family was held together despite federal subsidies aimed at deteriorating the nuclear family. It's assuming that your loved ones were not directly affected by the world's most oppressive justice system. The world's most oppressive justice system, of which I am a part. This is what we invited upon ourselves, right? After creating what are arguably virtual criminal petri dishes in many of our urban areas through housing subsidies, zoning ordinances, bad public schools, we created this system. And now, 25 years after the crime bill, youngsters, look it up please. 25 years after the crime bill, it turns out what? It turns out that an oppressive justice system makes it difficult for economic development, both at a city level, a national level, at a family level in particular. It turns out that criminalizing victimless behavior makes it a situation where youngsters are invited into a life of street crime. It turns out that the world's longest prison sentences undermines families. We have a system in the United States that has to change. Yes, if you are at the deep end of the pool, it may be the case that a rising tide will lift your boat. But if you're at the shallow end, if you're at the end where the war on poverty came in the 1960s and is still here to help you, you're anchored to the bottom and you're watching the rest of America sail over the horizon. This is where the gap comes from between the haves and the have-nots, and this is why it continues to grow year after year. And now, your self-appointed leadership, right? Marxists are partying like it's 1899 all over again. Pimping off arguably already discredited philosophy, wrapped in new paper, right? Sometimes we call it critical race theory. Sometimes we ask rhetorical questions like, do Black Lives matter? Well, don't ask rhetorical questions if you can't handle the truth, because here it is. You're damn right they matter, and a hell of a lot more than should be left to political vultures, a hell of a lot more than should be left to media opportunists. People who can't even bring themselves to watch the movie Hillbilly Elegy, much less read the book The Road to Serfdom. Marxism is a criminal philosophy. And I don't say that it's a criminal philosophy just because we've had 100 years of history to prove it wrong. 100 years of economic science to prove it wrong. I don't say it's criminal just because it flies in the face of what we consider American philosophy, libertarianism. It flies in the face of the Constitution. It pits American against American. I say that it's criminal because it robs us of the truth and thereby tries to rob us of our future. Marxism tries to teach us that prosperity comes from the resolution of class conflict. Whether that class conflict is described as it originally was, labor versus entrepreneurs, or the updated version, poor against rich, or the Democratic Party's new version, race against race, or the Republican Party's new version, high school educated versus college educated. No matter how you look at it, it's not true, because we know what the truth is. We know that prosperity comes from cooperation. The cooperation of labor and capital, the cooperation of one American and another American. Indeed, the cooperation of Americans with the rest of the world. We know, as a matter of fact, that where prosperity comes from is the cooperation of individuals making self-interested decisions in an environment of freedom. Freedom, what some people have come to call capitalism, is the goose that lays the golden eggs. It's our job as Americans, and particularly as libertarians, to bring people to the goose. Marxism seeks to tear down existing institutions like the goose. Don't hurt the goose, okay? Marxism hurts everybody, every day. People like you, people like me, people in this room. But to be frank, if I may, it's not people like you and me that wakes me up in the morning. It's the type of people on whom the cost of Marxism falls most heavily. the type of people that are residents of District 20 in Florida. And that is why I'm running for Congress.
Good up, everybody. Like, come on.